So I worked in the child care field, got a degree, all that stuff for a long time, and then I found out about Lisa Murphy, the Ooey Gooey lady. So I moved here to work with her. Greatest experience of my life. Unfortunately, her child care center only lasted about a year and a half. After I started working there, they went out of business during the recession in 2009. But it was a great experience for me. She actually stopped going on the road and touring, and she came in to work with me in the classroom for about 6 months. Her and I were co-teachers, and it was just a wonderful experience. And she's a great advocate for children and developmentally appropriate practice, evidence-based practice, which I think is very important, and best practice, okay? If any of you, I better talk about NACI, since we're here talking about NACI. This is the old developmentally appropriate practice book from 1987. I prefer this one to the new one only because they separate 3-year-olds from the 4s and 5s, although I do prefer mixed age groups for teaching and being in the classroom at mixed age groups. I also like how they show how 3s are a little different than 4s and 5s, and it really is more clear in the older version. But I really love this book. There's probably a lot in here we've forgotten. There's probably a lot in here we should remember. And I will also talk about Peter Gray. Who's heard of Peter Gray? I know you two have. Anyone else heard of Peter Gray? Okay, you should hear of Peter Gray. He's so awesome. He's all about self-directed play. And one of the major points he makes is that children, he's mapped and charted, and he can show this very clearly with a lot of data, how there has been a steady decline in the time that children spend playing freely, or playing at all for that matter, and in about 50, 60 years. And there's also mapped like 100% correlating increase in development in emotional and mental disorders among children, which is sad. And he makes these connections, and he blogs about it like every day, and he's really amazing. So Google Peter Gray. There's a ton of YouTube videos and things of him, and his blog is amazing. Also, Jeff Johnson and Danita Dinger. Anyone heard of them? I know you have. Jeff Johnson runs Explorations Early Learning. Danita has an in-home child care, and she was inspired by Jeff and others, and Lisa, I believe, to change her program from an academic approach to a more hands-on, child-directed, playful approach. And then in all her writings, she often gives a lot of great pointers about how to transition your own program as well. And I think she went through this whole process, and she really wants to share that with others so that these children can have a much better experience in their early childhood. The next one I really like to talk about is Daniel Hodgins. Does anyone know Dan Hodgins? He talks a lot about behavior and how to help children with behavior. I think most of what he actually talks about is like the adult's the problem most of the time. We have to get over our own issues about wanting to control everything, and we have to learn to maybe be a little bit more open to what we might consider to be chaos, because the children really need to be free to play and free to learn, and much more. But he's a really great advocate too. And then this one, of course, is for today, especially, the Loose Parts book. I don't know if anybody's seen this, Lisa Daly and Miriam Beleglovsky.